Welcome to DP's World podcast, where I'll be talking to very well known cinematographers. Initially, I'll be focusing on DPs from Poland. My first guest, Magdalena Górka, is a very well established cinematographer based in LA. Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of DP's World. Yes, it's called DP's World. Don't forget that name. Today, our first guest is a very well-established DP from Poland. Her resume is endless and includes movies such as I'm Still Here with Joaquin Phoenix, An Ordinary Man with Ben Kingsley, Jack Strong, which is a Polish movie, Paranormal Activities 3, but also music videos for Elton John, Katy Perry, and commercials with Cristiano Ronaldo. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Magdalena Górka. Magdalena, thank you so much for doing this and for being here and for sharing your experience. My very first question is: do you get nervous when you are in front of the camera?
Yeah, definitely. And when
Definitely.
being interviewed is the worst thing for me. I really don't like to be in front of the camera. That's why I'm behind. It's just, I don't have that talent.
So tell us about your journey as DP. When did it start?
I would just count it from the time when I get to film school, because I would just say that would be the very clear beginning of when I wanted to be a DP. And when I actually started shooting, it was way later.
Earlier than that, before school?
No, later.
Later. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, of course it was later. I didn't even know how to hold a camera before film school. So
I see. So, which school did you go to? What's the name of the school?
I went to a Polish National Film School in Łódź. Łódź. That's very fun city. Like a lot of great DPs went there. Hoyte Hoytema, for example.
Right.
Huge DP right now. Peter Sobociński, who was nominated this year for Boże Ciało.
Right.
Łukasz Żal, that was nominated for Aida and Cold War. Who else? Andrzej Bartkowiak, Dariusz Wolski. Trying to think, like I can go forever.
Right. Yes, so many of them. Yeah. And so you mentioned Piotr Sobociński, whose movie was nominated for an Oscar just a few months ago. His grandfather was your teacher, right?
Yes, he was my professor. Yes, and his father, also Peter Sobociński, was my first boss. When
you applied for school, there were 600 candidates, right? And only 2 girls. At least that's what my source says. Only 2 girls, and they accepted only 8 people, and you were the only girl. Is that true?
No, that's not true. Well, there was 600 people, and I don't know how many girls were applying because I have no idea. There were few of them with me when we were trying to pass this exam, which took 3 weeks. And they accepted 8 people and 2 girls. So I was the one of 2 girls on the first year, and then on the whole department, on a whole year, 4 years of cinematography department, there were no women at that time when we were in school.
If you were to start everything from the beginning, would you go to school or just start shooting? Because I'm asking this because nowadays it's there's so much content online, and this profession is such a hands-on profession. Do you think is it worth it to go to school?
Well, first of all, if I had the chance to start all over again, I would never become a DP.
Oh, really?
That's for sure.
Really?
But if I would suggest something, then definitely, because what school gives you, it gives you perspective, and it gives you a knowledge of the basis and also the movies, and you studying the masters. And without this knowledge, you definitely make more mistakes after. And then it's very hard to be inspired if you don't know what to be inspired with. So of course you can watch movies and teach yourself. But I found it very helpful when you have a very smart people that did it 1,000 times, to give their spin on everything that we're watching. So I think it's worth it. And definitely I would say go to school, because it also makes you humble. And when people are young, they know everything, of course,
Sure.
and so when we're getting older, we think that we know less and less with each year.
Mm.
So it just puts you in your place a little bit, and it shows you how much work it takes to make a movie. And also it teaches you teamwork. And it's not a lot of people in the film school, so you have a chance to get to know each other. And this is like a little bit of the test for the future, because that's what happens on every film set. You spend tremendous amount of time with each other, and you need to be a politician. So being in school with so many personalities and so close with people, because it's only 8 of you, it's a great lesson for the future.
I see. I see. 8, yeah, only 8 people. That's not a lot. Yeah. So it's like a small family, right? After so many.
Well,
Yeah.
yes. with
Understand.
with all the dysfunction of the family that you can think of.
Right. Right. Um, so I know we talked about about your school, the beginnings. So tell us about how did you get to where you are?
And
So,
where am I?
well, not to your living room, obviously, but to such a high position and in that very tough occupation, right? It's not easy.
Well, it's funny that you think that might be, it looks like this from the side, but when you're sitting where I'm sitting, it doesn't feel that way. So
Mm,
it's always good to have a different perspective. um I have no idea how I got here. I seriously don't. It's just I just wanted to survive. That was like my main goal,
right,
and
right.
I wanted to make movies. So that's what I was doing through all this time. And life is just very interesting thing. Somebody told me that the God is laughing when he looks at us trying to make plans.
Right, right.
Because it never works out the way we think he will, and it always works out completely different.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would need some questions because I don't know where to start.
What was your first serious gig?
Okay, so I started pretty early, because back in the day we actually had to work during the film school, most of us, because it was just right after communism time, and nobody really had a lot of money. So first 2 years you spend 100% of your time at school. You're there from 8 to 10 p.m. You're studying, you have lunch, then you have some film exercises, and then you're watching movies in a in a movie theater at school. So on the third year, you have a little bit of less classes, and everybody's trying to start working for someone so they can learn. But also back in the day, we had a very limited resources. First of all, Polish Film School is fully sponsored by government, and we just had a very small studio with the very old equipment. The only cameras that we had in school were RE2C. We didn't even have a camera with changeable lenses. It was just the one that just rotates.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was very basic, which I appreciate very much, because you had to learn everything. You had to do everything yourself. So the only one way to actually see how you light sets, large sets, and how you work with directors was on a movie set. So to get to the movie set was everyone's dream. And I started working for my professor son, Peter Sobocinski. He was my first boss, and I was his camera operator on a few commercials. but he left for States pretty early. So after him, I was working for Pavel Edelman and Jarek Shoda. And my first professional set that I recall was cellular commercial. Back in the day, cell phones, and it was Pavel Edelman was a DP and Władysław Pasikowski was a director. And I was 20 years old, and that was my first job, pretty much. That was like shocking, and it was nerve-wracking because those were like big stars in my country at that time. So I just really didn't want to fuck up. And so I was their camera operator for quite a while, and then I shot a feature movie with them called Reich, and that was my like first serious job. And I learned the most on that set, I think. And after that, I just knew that I want to do it. I just loved it. But it was a very, very hard work.
Sure. Well, going back to school a little bit, when you have fewer resources, right? You become, at least in my opinion, you become so much more creative because you have to create something, and you don't have, like you mentioned, the camera that you can't change the lenses, so you have to work with it, right? And you have to be creative, very much creative, right? Because it's not so professional, but you have to accomplish what you want to accomplish, right? And you do your best.
Yes, I mean, we didn't have all these lights that are available right now. There was no LEDs.
Exactly, yeah.
There was no soft sources. There were no soft boxes. You had to build everything yourself. And I was just terrified there because, the atmosphere in our country is not very welcoming. If you want to learn something like that, and they pretty much assume that you should know this. Like, you should just know this. So, I was terrified to ask questions, which was my huge mistakes, but I just didn't know any better back then. And like, I just didn't understood all the technical things and how to bounce the light, how to make it softer and all the filters. But whenever you would ask the question, it seems like you're just stupid. So it's just like this atmosphere of learning from big masters, where it's pretty much one-man show and you just have to catch up. So my chance to really learn the craft was on the movie sets, because I could watch gaffers and assistants and everyone working from the very basic, very beginning of building the lights and lighting idea. And that's where I actually just got my first jobs.
So that leads me to another question. Who was your mentor? Did you have a mentor? Do you still have a mentor?
Well, my mentor was definitely Witold Sobociński. It was my professor at school. He was very, very kind because back in the day, we would shoot on film. And whenever we would shoot our shorts in a school, every year at the end of the year, you would have to shoot like a little movie that was like 2, 3, 4 minutes long. And if you were lucky enough to pair with the director, then you could have made a little bit longer, because you would put together 2 resources of the budgets. And each of us would get 4 cans of film, which is nothing, which is pretty much, you have to make this movie 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. And having any extra film was worth gold. And I remember that Mr. Sobociński would bring the scraps from commercials that he was shooting, and he would give it to me. And we would use film ends and pack them and use for scenes. So we would just, tape the film together, and we just worked that way just to make it work. So I wasn't good at school. Like, I was first of all too young to be there. I was 18 when I got in, so I didn't know anything about life really, and also I didn't know much about filmmaking. So I wasn't ready to be able to use all these resources yet. So it was really really stressful time, and
Right.
it's supposed to be fun. So Witold Sobocinski was very reassuring, and many times he would mention to me that they wanted to expel me, and he was the one that convinced everyone that I should stay because there is something about me.
I see. I see. Yes, I read that he actually noticed very first time. He noticed something in you very first time he met you when you applied to school, right?
So it wasn't him. It
Okay.
was it was our other professor. His name was Mieczysław Jachoda,
Mm,
and this is the DP that shot our at that time the biggest production of all times in Poland, called Krzyżacy,
right.
which I have no
Right.
idea how you translate it in English, but it was like this Middle Ages massive movie
Mm-hmm.
about Polish people taking on Prussia on a massive battle. And so he was a character, and he was the professor that would take everyone's photograph and just tape it in his book with the name and description. And I had a beautiful long hair as a 19-year-old girl, and when I showed up on the first year, I shaved my head because I wanted people to take me seriously. and he looked at me and he was like, why would you do such a thing? I mean, you're supposed to be pleasant to look at.
Right.
So
Right.
very early it was established, what is the reason of me being there. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they never failed to remind me.
I see. I see. So, is it important to have a mentor?
Yes, because I think so. Because whenever you're starting, you don't know nothing, and just it's very important to have someone that you can call and just ask questions, technical questions of how you should do basic things, because it just comes with the experience. You need to do this 1,000 times and make this mistake 100 times to know every single um, outcome of the certain situation. And still, you're learning every single time you're doing something, because the same situation never repeats. And so it's very good to have someone to call and just reassure yourself that whatever your approach is right. And also inspiration wise, like you watch movies and you have your DP heroes, your director heroes, and just to be able to talk to them um, is just priceless.
Right. So, let's talk a bit more technical now. So, when did you start shooting digital?
Well, sometime I think around 10 years ago, my first digital movie was I'm Still Here.
Hmm.
But it was a documentary, so it was kind of no other way to do it. But my first feature movie that was digital was Paranormal Activity 3.
So, how do you look at cinematography now and then? Meaning, like when you were starting, and now, how with the technology that has developed so much.
Well, back in the day, a DP was a magician because nobody knew what we do, and everything was in this magic box
Hmm.
that is metal and it's locked, and like we don't know what's gonna come out, so they better don't fuck it up. So we definitely, DP back in the day was very respected figure that is the only person on set that knows what he's doing in this department. And right now it's way more accessible, so you can see what you're doing. You don't need a light meter. It's just so much easier and so much less stressful. And also there is not that much respect for the craft anymore, because it just loosen up with everything. Back in the day, you would have to watch how much film you use. So everybody was way more prepared with direction, with blocking, with just rehearsals. So you wouldn't shoot a scene until everybody was really ready. And right now we just have cameras rolling and everybody says, well, just let's just roll and see what we're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
So also the style of filming become way more looser and way more experimental, and you can do much more, but it's not always good.
So since technology is so advanced now, and it's only getting more advanced, how much more competitive it has become?
Well, anyone can be a DP right now. So you have a camera, you're a DP. And right now it's just it's like a savanna, with with animals and lions and antelopes, and whoever runs faster and have a better personality wins.
I see. So that actually that's kind of leads me to another question, because there are so many people that call themselves cinematographers. What does it take to call yourself a DP? At what point do you think, in your opinion?
At this point, you
At
have
what?
Instagram account and you call yourself a DP.
I see.
We live in a times that anyone can become anybody, except maybe a doctor. But in the current situation, as we can see, anybody thinks that can have an opinion about anything.
Sure.
So, it's just this world that is extremely competitive, and you can literally become anyone you want in a very short amount of time, because it's very, very hard to check people credentials right now. Of course, people who care about it and who care about the quality of work and what you represent going to seek partners, but most of the people just want to do things cheap and fast.
Right.
And that's what I'm hearing more and more. So in my world, in the world that I come from and how I was taught by masters, is that you call yourself a DP when you know the answers to the questions that no one else knows on set.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, we would think that you can't call yourself a DP unless you complete your first feature.
I see.
Real feature, real movie with real actors, with real directors. If you have one under your belt, you can call yourself a DP. That's why this movie would call a debut, So that's like this first step. But today, everything is open, and everything is up for grab.
I see. Okay, so who is your favorite DP?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very, very hard question, because there is so many that if I won't mention someone, that might be very painful. But like the master of the masters would be Gordon Willis, always and forever. I mean, the guy was a genius. And like, if somebody would tell me what was my favorite movie, and what I would always wanted to shoot would be a Godfather. So that is the high top. Nestor Almendros, because he just had incredible talent. From DPs that are working right now, I would say Hoyte van Hoytema is up there. He's extremely talented. I love his style. I love the way he shoots. I love his colors. I love his storytelling. Bradford Young, I really, really appreciate what he did on Arrival, because that's the type of movies I want to do. It was just breathtaking. Rob Hardy, Ex Machina. I'm really into sci-fi and action movies. of course, Roger Deakins, but this is just
was-
lame, I think, because it's for everyone loves Roger Deakins. It's
I was
just
waiting.
master.
I was waiting for this
Yes,
name.
of course, it's a master of the masters. I forgot about my friend Chase Irvin.
Okay.
I forgot it. Chase. Chase is he's my friend from New York. Chase Irvin is a master of the masters. I mean, this guy, I think, going to get an Oscar pretty soon. But he's a visionary DP, very young and extremely talented. And his work is so beautiful about like how to shoot and what to choose, digital over film. You always pick the source, the best for the subject. So it comes from the conversation with producers and the budget first, always. And then with the director of what are his expectations, what he wants to achieve, what he's thinking about, how he wants to shoot. So there are so many factors to pick the right medium that you can't just say it would be always great to shoot on film, because sometimes when you have to go very, very, very fast on a TV shows and the light is just running out and you don't have enough of daylight, digital can be very helpful. So it always depends on the project.
I see. What's your style and how do you create style?
Oh my Lord. Well, I don't really know how to fully answer that. It's just something like your personality, you know? I think that style is exactly like personality. It's very hard to explain and describe it because it comes from within. So you just, it's your sensibilities and your taste and the way you see the world and how you apply the way you see the world to creating the world in a movie. So I get inspired by different things on a different ages of my life. And, you know, I came from very naturalistic cinematography and natural light because I was starting on a low budget and you don't have a lot of equipment. So you have to be extremely creative and obviously just use sunlight in many different ways. And then you start creating things from bigger budget and bigger possibilities. And you start playing with it. So I think that right now I'm like in the middle of my style creation because I evolved from this naturalistic thing to extremely stylized. And I think that I reached the peak of extreme stylized on my last movie because that's what the director wanted. And now I'm seeking projects that are gonna go on the other way because I did so many stylized cinematography recently that I wanna go back to the naturalistic. So it's always evolving. And the most important thing I think is to, and I always repeat that, to fit the style of cinematography to the story that you're telling. So for 2 years, I was shooting comic books. And comic books, of course, are very colorful and very interesting, very aggressive with color framing, lighting. And then I finished with the movie. My last movie is like a comic book, but it's not a comic book. So, you know, but the director wanted something super poppy, super young, super flashy. And I thought that whatever I learned on a Doom Patrol, I'm just going to apply to this movie. And it worked quite well. But I got so saturated with this style and the color that I kind of want to come back to tabula rasa and have like literally white canvas and start working with shooting beautiful people on the beach. Right. Like I just want to do something else because that's, I think, what makes you evolve and move forward to do different styles. But if you would have to describe my style right now, I would say that it's quite colorful and stylized.
Let's talk about Boris. Are you confused?
Yes.
So it's let's talk about Boris. It was a filter that you created for
Ah!
Paranormal Activities 3, right? So
Yes.
let's talk about it a bit.
Oh yeah, I was driving a car back then. There was a how my friends used to say, a murder out Audi, which was totally black with black wheels and black windows, and he looked like a Russian gangster, so we called it Boris. And then we had to create this filter for Paranormal Activity 3, where the action was happening in the 80s, and my directors, Henry and Rael, they wanted to create the picture that it's very much like home video from the 80s, which was HVHS. We thought it's going to look like VHS, but then they purchased these cameras on eBay, and we shot tests, and we agreed that SVHS looks like something that we want to aspire to. So we took this picture and we shot on very high quality digital cameras, of course, because we had to have a latitude. And then we took this at photocam in the valley. We took this footage, and then we printed on 16 millimeter negative. I'm sorry, we printed on 16 millimeter positive, just to see how this digital footage looks on film. And then we looked at it, and it was too clean. So then the artist in photocam on Flame create a filter for us with the lines that would move, and added a grain taken from this SVHS footage that we shot, and it looked quite awesome. So we had a plugin that we would just apply to a picture, and we had to name this filter somehow, just for laughs. Jose Parra, my wonderful producer in photocam, asked me how I want to name it. I'm like, why don't we just name it Boris, just like my car, so I can remember it.
Yes, yeah, that's a good name. The part 3 that you shot made the most amount of money and was the most popular, right? And people were scared, I guess, the most.
I think so. At that time,
Yeah.
he made like a killing, I think so. But from all the series, yes, apparently it was the most successful one.
Great.
From I was told.
Right. Magdalena, tell us about a TV series you shot, Doom Patrol. Your experience. How is it different between shooting a TV series and a movie?
Well, first of all, in the movie, you have a one director and one DP, most of the times, if people don't get fired, which in America is quite common. So, you're creating a look of a movie together with the director, and it's just one thing that you are fully in charge of. And most of the time, you have more time and more control. Like you are a maker of the movie along with other people. And then during the TV series is more of a teamwork, in a way that you're sharing this look with another DP, because most of the time our system in America is created the way that we alternate with another DP, and when one is prepping, another one is shooting. So you have to be in a close touch with another DP, and you guys have to match each other looks. So you have a certain look set by the pilot, and most of the time with the DP that doesn't shoot the series, but sometimes they do. And then you have to make the look you have to make the same look through all the series, like they establish in a pilot, which is, we talked about someone's styles. So they have to pick a person that shoots in the same field, right? So you have to be very open-minded and a great team worker, because you work with so many people, and then it's a bigger machine. So most of the series I shot 2-3 cameras, always. You have double updates, mean that when your episode is starting, on the same day, the last episode that your friend is shooting, hopefully a friend, is shooting, is overlapping. So you're exchanging the crew. And you have to be really elastic then. It's becoming my favorite word right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then each episode is most of the time different director. So we call it speed dating. You meet the director on the first day of prep. You have 7 to 10 days to come up with how you're going to shoot it, what is the style of the episode, what the director wants, how you can help them. The DP is there for all the time, but the directors are changing each episode. And every single one is a different personality, and you have to adapt yourself every 10 days to working with a different person. And every person works completely different than another one. So one director likes to set up the shots. Another one doesn't like to set up the shots. He likes only to focus on the actors. And you have to very fast judge what the personality is and what this person wants. And then a huge difference between a TV series and a feature is that you have someone like showrunner. Showrunner in TV is a person that most of the time created the TV series, or is a main writer and the producer. So this is the person that calls the shots, and they are on the set, or sometimes they're not. They're dialing in on a conference, and the directors most of the times have to listen to the showrunner and their input. So the director is more a man for hire than a visionary that creates the whole look, because the visionary is a showrunner. So, of course, TV series are way more political in the way they're being shot and run. And you are part of a massive machine. Where in the movie, movie sets are different tiers, but a TV series most of the time is a huge machine, and you have to be really fast. So there is no mercy on a TV set. You have to shoot 6 to 10 pages a day, which is brutal, and it all has to look amazing. And you always have to tell AD how much time you need for a scene, and you have to stick to it. So there is no a lot of time left for improvisation and pretty much trying things, which a lot of people like to do. You have to know exactly what you want. You have to communicate to the crew very fast and very clearly, and pretty much avoid making mistakes, because changing a lighting setup, it's going to be a certain death.
Yeah, that sounds very, very challenging, definitely. And dealing with so many details and characters, as you mentioned, the director changes so many times that you have to adjust. Yeah, that's craziness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very challenging world, but very rewarding these days, because these days the business is changing tremendously. And back in the day, people didn't respect DPs that used to do TV, because it was so fast and it was a network and there was not much art. And right now, because of all the streaming services, the budget became bigger, and those productions have a support of the best talent, from actors to production designers to directors. So everyone wants to do TV series right now, because this is where the art is. So, in your career, you should never say never. because you never know what's going to happen 10 years from now. 10 years from now, maybe robots going to shoot for us and our work will disappear. But
Right.
you really never know. So you have to be open-minded. And then I shot this TV series Doom Patrol that is coming out right now. We have April 2020, middle of pandemic, and our series Doom Patrol is coming out to HBO Max in May. They're going to screen first and second season. And it was a very big budget. It was the biggest budget I ever worked with so far. And with that comes huge responsibility. Because yes, of course, you can have amazing equipment. You can pretty much request whatever you need to make your life easier, which means shooting faster. But also you have to be responsible for this picture, and you have to be responsible for making a day on time. And that's fully on DP. And this is tremendous stress, because all of us wants to do our job the best, but sometimes you just have to make a day. And it's very, very hard to let go, but you have to pick your battles.
Right. And how long did it take you to shoot the show?
I was in Atlanta for 8 months.
8 months, yeah. Wow.
So it was also the longest, one of the longest jobs since I moved to America. I did two TV series in Europe for 10 months each. So I had an experience with such a long project, but this one was definitely the most stressful because of the budgets, the level of actors, the network, just everything had to be tip top and the best.
Are paintings and still photography inspiration for you?
Yes, always. Every single time the way I work, I have a big board in my office whenever I prep for a movie. And I start with the one single picture in the middle of that board pinned in. Whenever I go on the location, I pin that one picture that I think how the movie should look like. And then from that picture, you just build the whole world. And it's photography and it's paintings and locations. So it's very important for me, location scouting with the director, because this is how I create the palette of the whole movie. And it's always very surprising. I remember when I went to Serbia to shoot this movie, The Ordinary Man, with Brad Silberling directing and Ben Kingsley starring in it, I had a completely different vision of that movie. I thought it's going to be a cold, desaturated movie, pretty much like Jack Strong, and I was hired because of Jack Strong. So normally you're being hired based on your previous movie, and people always want you to do exactly what you do before. But Brad is an amazing director and very open-minded. And he's so highly intelligent that he understands that this is a collaboration between people, and also applying the location that we have into creating the style. So when we started scouting, turns out that in Belgrade, there is no cold light on the streets. And all the lights, there are still sodium vapor, which is extremely popular now. But when we were shooting this movie, it wasn't that much. I was thinking it's going to be Jack Strong, Collateral, just cold green. And then suddenly he started building this picture of this greedy, orangey movie. And then production designer, he was one of the most amazing production designers I worked with up to date, Kreka. It's the man that created Delicatessen. And he worked with Kusturica for many, many years. He created oh my goodness, Arizona Dream. And so it's extremely, extremely experienced man. And when he first met me, he wasn't so sure that I'm a right choice, because he's seen everything, and his last DP on the last project was Vittorio Storaro. So then I show up, and then he's just like, well, let's see. But we hit it off immediately, because we connected on the level of art. We had the same references, the same paintings, the same light ideas, the same colors. And he created the movie with me so beautifully that I would never be able to do it without him. But what I'm trying to say is that the colors that he offered were all brown and green and yellow. And when he built the set, because most of the movie was on set, I photographed it and I'm like, this movie is orange. And it just came from the all collaboration and the photos. And then we had Rembrandt paintings all over for light references. And it's just always like this. And then there is this huge board of light, and then you take it and you're trying to make a movie out of this. And it's almost every single time the movie looks like the board.
Mm-hmm. So who's your favorite painter?
My favorite painter of all times is Edward Hopper.
Gotcha. Very, very well known, of course. Yeah.
Very well known, of course. Yes. And you know, my friend Beata Konarska, she's my favorite painter because she can capture the movement like no one else. And I love all the Impressionist paintings, and I dream of making a movie that looks like Renoir. Mm-hmm. I just dream about it. It just never happened so far, but you know, one day maybe it will. That is just like this beautiful world that is half real. So I love Caravaggio. I love his light. It's very often that I use his references. Of course, Rembrandt that I mentioned, and all the Flamants, because of cold light and natural light that comes from the window. So Vermeer, and all these guys. So that's what I'm always going for whenever I prepare the movie. I just look at the albums and photographs and paintings. And I'm sure that your next question is, who's my favorite photographer? Always and forever, Philip Lorca de Corsia.
Gotcha. Okay. That's the only one.
No, not the only one, but you know, that's what I always find, that whenever I'm creating a lookbook, he's always there. So that's the only one photographer that I always have in my lookbooks.
I see. So you mentioned that your favorite movies are action movies that you would like to shoot. What's the next movie? Which movie would you like to shoot? That'll be your biggest accomplishment in action movie, in that genre.
Oh, come on. Always everyone asks me this question, and I answer this so many times that it should be just like typed on the bottom like a line, you know. Well, I can't talk about my next movie because I don't want to jinx it. And of course, whole production is on hold during the pandemic. Sure. So we don't know when we're gonna come back on set and which movie gonna go first. So I can't talk about it, but it's very close to my heart already, and to a genre that I want to shoot. And of course, I want to make a James Bond. That's my ultimate dream.
Right.
That I want to shoot a movie like James Bond.
That would be nice, yeah.
Definitely. That would be great.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will happen for you very soon. Well, my last question is, what is your advice for upcoming cinematographers?
Don't lose faith. It's the only thing you have to always remember. Don't lose faith. Stay positive. Don't overthinking. Be polite. Always answer emails, which is very hard.
Go to your spam, always check it out, everything.
Yes. Pick up your phone, call people, ask advice. Don't hesitate. Stick to your guns. Be, how to describe it the best? Elastic. I would say elastic says it all. Just to be very open for other people's ideas, and never say no unless this is something ridiculous that is going to hurt you, and you have to take a responsibility for it. And just don't look at other people's careers. Get inspiration from other people's careers and be inspired by other people's work. But watching other people's journeys and thinking about it doesn't do you well, doesn't do you any good, because please remember that everyone on Instagram posts their greatest hits. And whatever you watch on social media and in interviews in an American cinematographer or in our ICG magazine, this is most of the times highlight of someone's career, and people were working for this moment for years. And even if they didn't, and it was just a lucky streak and they found themselves in the right place in the right time, it doesn't mean that that situation will serve you well. So always remember to just do your thing, be professional, do your job the best you can in the circumstances that you have, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Gotcha. I know it was the last question, but this is the last question because you mentioned something interesting. Since your agent is not telling me to finish yet, we have plenty of time.
My agents are all sick.
When do you say no to a project?
Oh my Lord. Well, I would say you say no to a project when it doesn't agree with you. If your gut is saying that this something is not right, then you say no to a project. Also, when you can afford it, you say no to a project when you think that you can't bring to the table, you can't bring what you do to the table. Like, for example, you are not able to work with a certain budget or a certain vision if the vision is too grand for the budget. Like, if you see a travel, then you say no to a project. But generally, you should just work. And I was thinking in the last few years that I can somehow control my career by choosing right scripts and the right projects and being more picky. And it's not true, because it's the same with life. Like I started this interview, that you think you can control it. And of course, you know, if something is absolutely ridiculous and it doesn't agree with you and you just don't like the story, then you say no. But if you have good collaborators or decent script, you just work, because you never know what you're going to learn on this project, who you're going to meet, and how it's going to turn out. Because like I said before, there's so many elements for a movie to become a good movie, and it's very, very hard to see it at the beginning and just judge it based on a script, because even the best script in the world can be destroyed in the production, and even the worst script in the world can be elevated during production if you have a right team. So, you know, if you have a fortune teller, maybe they can tell you, but just to say no, I wouldn't do it.
Right. Well, Magdalena, that was my last question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for sharing your knowledge. We truly hope you're gonna get that James Bond movie soon. And, yeah, well, we'll be watching your career definitely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Stay tuned for the next episode with Bartosz Nalazek.